What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and we are going back to the island, back to the desert island to talk comics. And I'm being joined by Matt Garvey. Matt Garvey's comic creator. How are you doing, Matt? You okay?
I'm very well, buddy. How are you? Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, I'm good, mate. I'm very good. Thanks for joining me. It's always a pleasure, and especially someone sort of in the comic world. I mean, do you want to tell the listeners about your comics and especially where they can find them?
Yeah, certainly. I'm a comic writer from the UK. I've been putting my comics out for the last 4 years or so. You can find me on Twitter at MattGarvey1981, and you can find my comics at mattgarvey.co.uk.
Excellent.
So yeah.
And I can recommend. I've read a number of Matt's comics. You cover a number of styles. You've got your more sort of humour comics and that sort of thing, all the way through to some really sort of dark, some darker sort of superhero stuff, which I've really enjoyed actually.
Oh, bless you! Thank you very much. I appreciate that, buddy.
So listen, check him out. It's good because you've been putting stuff out as well during the lockdown. Obviously, people can sort of check out your comics. But we're here today to talk more comics, and so I asked you the simple question: which 3 comics, single issues, would you take to a desert island? Which ones do you want to talk about? And you have chosen Hitman by Garth Ennis from 1993, Nightwing #1 from 1996, and Hawkeye #1 from 2015. So we'll go through those in chronological order.
Actually, it was Hawkeye #7.
Oh, no, Hawkeye #7. Oh, okay, I'll have to jump on that then. But that's fine, we can still talk because I've read the whole series. But
oh, good.
yeah. So let's start though with Garth Ennis. So I'll tell you, I will confess something. I'd not read any Hitman until this. Yeah, well, it's interesting because I've obviously read things like The Boys, and I've read, like Garth Ennis' Punisher and all that other stuff. So it's always been on that list of like, I really should read Hitman.
Well, this predates all of that. I mean, at the time this came out, what year did you say it was?
93.
93. So I was like 11, nearly 12. So at this point, I hadn't even heard of like Preacher and stuff like that. So this was my first introduction to Garth Ennis. And like, if you've not read it now, but you've read stuff like The Boys and stuff like that. If you read this, you go, it's kind of similar. It's like kind of like a precursor to it. Do you know what I mean? Because for those who don't know, it's set in Gotham, and it's about a hitman called Tommy Monaghan, who basically he has superpowers that he got from an alien bite, but they don't really lean on that too much. But he's a hitman, and literally he kills other superheroes for money or supervillains for money. So and it's just all about the crazy chaos that he gets into, really. But if you've never read anything, you've never read any Hitman, so I'm interested in what you know what you thought of it, really.
Well, yeah, no, do you know what? You say that about The Boys and stuff, and that was really the first note I got was this is almost like a prototype for a lot of what things, a lot of what is going to come. It's still got that Garth Ennis snark, which I like. It's clearly Garth Ennis. I really enjoyed it though. I thought it was really good. I mean, I like the John McCrea art, and but I felt that it's a story idea that I was like, reading this first issue, and I know they were going into the 90s, which is a slightly different era. But even some of the stuff that's alluded to in this, I was a bit like, I'm surprised they got away with this in a standard DC title.
Well, there's a later on there's a character that it's kind of like a demon-y, goblin-y character, like he's from hell, and his name's Beta, and apparently they originally wanted to call him Master Beta.
Yeah.
But there's some things they couldn't get, because this is kind of like a Vertigo book, but it's not a Vertigo book because it's set in, what's that term, canon, because it's set in the proper DCU. So it's good, and I like the fact that you mentioned John McCrea, because I'm a huge John McCrea fan, and if you look, this is John McCrea's old style.
Yes.
Because after this series, he kind of had to reinvent it. I remember him tweeting about it. There was a time when he wasn't getting much work in the comic industry, and he went back and he dramatically changed the way he draws. So if you look at something like this and then pick up Dead Eyes, which is amazing if you've not read it, you look at the two styles and you can still see it's him, but it's kind of mutated into something. He's basically leveled up even more. I mean, he was good when he was doing this, but now he's just dear. I love John's art. I love it.
Yeah, no, he is good. He's a staple. I know he's one of the ones that when he pops up, I'm always sort of glad to see his art. But this feels 90s. That was something that will sort of especially stem into sort of Nightwing as well. But this felt very sort of 90s. That idea of, it's not quite extreme. I mean, this isn't Image. This isn't sort of like the sort of McFarlane or Liefeld sort of level of extreme, but you can feel that they're letting the
brutal, though.
It is. I was going to say it's pushing the boundaries of what I would expect. I did not use it. I actually double checked. I was like, I'm sure, is this not a Vertigo title? So I had to really double check to make sure, because I was quite surprised, like you said, that it's in canon. But the other thing as well, this being like an introductory issue. I mean, obviously he came out of, what was it, the Demon Annual 2, which is the same year. So he'd only been around, and then got his full series. This is very much an introductory issue.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned like Todd McFarlane and John and Rob Liefeld, because obviously when they all left Marvel, the industry had to kind of shake up what they were doing, and they did like a big crossover called Bloodlines, and in the Demon issue 2, that's part of that crossover, and that's how Tommy gets his powers, and you're first introduced to him. So I know my shit.
Yeah.
I know my comic history.
So he is sort of almost a reaction to the Image revolution sort of thing from one of the big two. That's interesting. But again, I like the fact that, like you say, there's potential here for them to go, really extreme, big guns and pouches and everything being shot at. And there's a bit of that. I mean, there's in one of the things he fights, or he kills off basically a group of superhero mercenaries that have been sent after him. That, I wouldn't be surprised if I did see them appear in a sort of like a Youngblood or like a Spawn issue or something like that. You know what I mean? They look like that, and then he just takes them out, and I was like, is that a dig at Image sort of thing? But
Well, I think it is.
Yeah.
Because if there's a great documentary, if you've got Amazon Prime, you can watch it for free. There's a great documentary called The Image Revolution. It's all about the history of the guys that left Marvel and started Image, and they talk about that the impact they had on the industry was so revolutionary that they're the guys that killed Superman.
Mm.
Wasn't DC, because that. They were, Marvel and DC were losing, traction to these guys, and literally they had to come up with something big, and it's like, well, we have to kill off our main guy just to, get our numbers up and stuff like that, because that came out in 92, I think.
Yeah.
And I forget what year Image Comics started, off the top of my head.
It was about the same time, I think, 91, 92.
92, do you know what I mean? So that's
yeah.
that's definitely, a result of, Image Comics starting up, and Bloodlines as well. It's all these things that where the industry's changed, and they're doing big yearly events just to hook readers in and get all the tie-ins so they get you in. But I'm glad they did it, because I love Hitman. It's great.
yeah. No, I think it's interesting that sort of, like I say, because obviously this period where we do get like I say, some of these more extreme heights. I mean, it's not soon after this you get things like Nightfall and then you sort of get those Batman Cataclysm and No Man's Land and all that through the 90s. Like, he gets an absolute kick in, so they're sort of reacting to that constantly, really. No, but again, it's the other thing is, well, this seems weirdly grounded. Like you say, he's got these hero powers or superpowers. He's got X-ray vision and some sort of telepathy.
He can read minds.
Yeah. And he obviously uses them to his advantage, especially when dating women, which, It's a bit sleazy, but it sort of fits the character. But I like the fact that he is grounded, even with these sort of other hitmen types. That he has got like a group of friends, and they just get together and shoot shit and play poker. Like,
it's very much an anti-hero, very much like a John Wick type character. It's very centered in reality. It's guys. I mean, obviously, I know John Wick like hyper violence, and gun fu, but yeah, it's very grounded, very very earnest. In the way it's portrayal of real humans in a superhero world.
Yeah, it is, and that's what I liked it, that it was that sort of just almost like a street level kind of story, but with this character that's clearly got these powers and stuff. And I mean, I will admit, having not read it, I will be getting more. Like, it has sort of whetted my appetite. Oh, there's more to this, especially coming the cliffhanger as well for this issue, because obviously he's a hitman, so he takes on these jobs. And the one he's given at the end of this is a real interesting one. Like, he basically gets assigned to kill the Joker. And we won't spoil it beyond that, but there's a couple of interesting points in this, and it makes me wonder. Sort of like, I mean, I don't think Garth Ennis likes superheroes.
Well, I saw I saw an interview with I can't remember who it was. I was watching. I watched loads of interviews with like comic creators and stuff, like, because Garth did was it The Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe? And I think that was his big introduction to superheroes. And this interview, I cannot remember who it was with, and they were saying like, he just doesn't like superheroes. That's why he was killing them off.
Yeah.
Same as The Boys. He doesn't like superheroes. It's very much a superhero book, The Boys, but it's not, because it's looking at it from very much like what Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross did. With Marvels, it's looking at the super world through the lens of of the average human. And I like that, and I like the way that Garth does that in his writing. He's like, well, this is set in Gotham, it's set in the Cauldron, which is a desolate area, and this is a hitman working on Batman's turf.
Yeah.
And it's such a unique idea. I think it's brilliant.
Well, and it is. I like the fact as well that in this he, he's given this sort of job, and he gets a visit from. The thing is, he gets a visit from what's clearly, Batman at the beginning, but they try not to allude to it. Like, they don't show him. They show him in shadow, or they show a little bit of him, and it's not until later that sort of like Batman turns up, and they do mock him, really, don't they? So it's. It's good,
but what you'll find is when you read more of the series, there's always a little sprinkling of superheroes. There's Green, the Carl Reiner Green Lantern appears in a few issues. There's one episode that links into the final night crossover with Superman, which is really good. And it's little things like that. It's just a superb series. It's ultra violent. And it's the art's amazing, and it's tongue in cheek. There's a lot of jokes. Even though I've picked the first one because I didn't know if you'd read it or not, but there's a 2-issue arc called Zombie Night at Gotham Aquarium, where Tommy's hired to kill a scientist, and basically he's turned all the animals at the aquarium into zombies, basically. So all these like killer penguins and stuff are chasing him and his motley crew and stuff, and it's just absurdity done brilliantly.
Yeah, and it's that thing. I mean, Garth Ennis it's something I know, especially for this sort of this is sort of the tail end really of sort of the British invasion and stuff. We're sort of or getting into the peak of it maybe, but you've got these guys that are coming sort of from Britain, and you go back and you can sort of see some of the early stuff that Garth Ennis has done. You see like some of the stuff he's done on 2000 AD and stuff, and he's got a very specific tone. And I love that, knowing that this is sort of like, that there's this American version of the superheroes, and then there's like this British wave that comes in, and Garth Ennis is very clearly part of that, and just going, yeah, this is how we see things. This is our sort of cynical view on things.
Exactly, that's exactly what it is.
And I do thoroughly enjoy that. No, I will be doing it because did Garth Ennis did Section 8, the sort of superheroes that like really sort of like basically sort of really off kilter. Like one of them's got like he welds dogs to people, or
yes, and they are introduced in Hitman.
I was going to say I thought that's where they first got introduced.
Because Six-Pack's the leader. He's a regular at Noonan's bar.
Yeah,
and he's just just a drunk, and obviously just turns up, tells stories about how him and Superman, beat Darkseid, and then just goes off and pisses his pants. It's it's stuff like that. But yeah, Section 8, Dog Welder and stuff like that. Yeah, they're all in this. So yeah.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, again, like I say, if you've ever read The Boys, like this is, you need to go back, and I can imagine like going back and reading this is like you say, it's a prototype. It's there as a sort of a precursor. It's definitely in that lineage, and so yeah.
And it needs to be a TV show. It so needs to be a TV show.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Like when you see like the Netflix Punisher and Daredevil series, like this, I know DC have got their own, TV, universe. It's like, oh, this would be so perfect for it, it's 60 issues.
Yeah. So you got a good long run of things to pick up from.
Yeah, and they just keep getting better and better. And this is probably the first run of a comic I've got from the first issue at the grand level that I got in a sweet shop, not even a comic shop, a sweet shop, and I read it all the way. I got it every month until the end.
Yeah, that's when you can say when you've I mean, assuming you've still got those issues, have you? Then sort of, you've.
I've got every single floppy of this. I've got a couple of the trades, and I've got them all digitally as well. Yeah. So I can literally. I'm a sucker for that. I know people go, physical or digital, and I'm like both. I get both. I end up, I get my weekly ones every week still, and they sit in a pile. I end up not reading them because I'm busy doing other stuff, looking after the baby or writing when I can or working. And then there'll be a sale on Comixology, and I end up buying them anyway, and then I end up reading them digitally. So I've got both kinds.
I am much in the same boat. I've got, I say there's the amount of times that sort of I've pretty much stopped with sort of physical floppies now, almost. But yeah, I'll look at a trade and you go, oh yeah, I've got to get that. We really will get that. And then say someone will come up on Comixology and I'm like, oh, there it is. And so I've got a lot in physical and then duplicated on digital. It's just so much easier. It's a great platform.
But a lot of my floppies are in the loft now anyway, so I can't get to them, and I can't buy any more. I only buy the odd trade, physical trade now because I don't have room. So literally, I'll buy the floppies, or they'll go in a long box and go in a loft, and then I'll just buy them digitally. And unless there's a cool Absolute edition, then I'll buy that.
Yeah, that's the worst one, because I've got that as well. I've got the the smaller sort of trays, the sort of 1 to 6, the sort of 5, 6 issues, and then they'll do like the omnibus edition. You're like, oh, all right then.
Well, that was a thing. One of the comics I was gonna do, it's a Batman comic. It's one of the comics that got me actually into Batman. Because that's the thing. Even though I read Hitman, I wasn't into Batman. This is probably one of the first DC books that I read. But there's a great storyline, Batman storyline called The Black Mirror with Scott Snyder, Jock, and Francesco Francavallli. And that's what I was going to do, but that's not one single comic, and you can't really pick one segment. But like that, I've got single issues, I've got the trade, I've got the Absolute edition, and I've got digitals. So I've got like four versions of it. So, terrible.
Yeah. Well, no, so anything else you want to mention about Hitman number 1? I mean, it's a great series. I will be. I'm glad you pushed me into reading it, because it meant I will be reading the rest.
It's really good. So it's he's a superhero assassin, and super, just any kind of super, good or bad. He does live by a moral code. He doesn't kill good guys, and literally, he gets offered $1 million to break into Arkham to kill the Joker.
Yeah,
and obviously, even though Batman hates the Joker, he's the yin to his yang. He can't let anyone kill him, so Batman kind of has to defend him to defend the Joker from Tommy, but there's other supernatural things at play and stuff like that. And it just it's one of them comics. You can read the first issue, it's a good first issue, but it does kind of open the gateway to other stories that kind of go through pretty much the entirety of the series. And it's just a good read. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's just fun. And which is what comics should be. It's fun.
I have to admit, his confrontation with Batman was good. I mean, I like the fact he uses his extra vision, and he identifies that it's a call back or a call forward, I suppose, but it's a call back to the Dark Knight Returns. The idea that the bat symbol is bulletproofed. It's got the Kevlar.
It's white, yellow. It's because everyone aims for that, because they can see that.
So I like the fact that he then uses it to blast him off the wall, but then when he gets sort of when Batman punches him, he basically he just pukes up on Batman's boots, and. The irreverence of it all, it sort of is good. I really enjoyed it.
Good, I'm glad.
So-
I'd hate to have picked a comic that you didn't like. Otherwise, it would be a very short call to hang up.
Yeah, just rubbish. Finished.
Ding.
Yeah, but that one I will be checking that out more. So let's move on. I would say we're staying in Gotham. We're actually moving just down the coast, and jump forward to 1996. So Chuck Dixon, Scott McDaniel on art, Nightwing #1.
Yes.
And this is an interesting one as well, because I've dipped into this series, and I think I've read this issue in floppy many years ago. I think it's one of the ones I picked up just randomly from a charity shop. But I love this style of 90s art.
Well, do you know what the weird thing is? The first comic I ever bought again was from a sweet shop, and it was Daredevil 305, and I didn't find this out till years later. It was Scott McDaniel on the art as well. But if you look at his art in that compared to his art in this, it's completely different. It's like if you look to Frank Miller's Daredevil run back in the 80s, and then look at Dark Knight Returns. It just. They're different. They're worlds apart. You would not believe it's the same artist. Yeah. And so that took me by surprise a few years ago when I realised that. But again, I was very. I know it sounds silly, but like when you're younger and you kind of, people say you pick Marvel or DC, but you only usually tend to pick Marvel or DC based on budget. And if you're a kid and you've only got a certain amount of income, it's like, well, if I buy the Marvel books, because they all kind of tie in together and stuff like that, you kind of focus on that one universe. So. Pretty much, Hitman was my first introduction to DC books, but Nightwing was my first introduction to the Bat universe because I never really read Batman. I never read Batman until Grant Morrison's run, basically when he killed him. And the only reason I started reading that was because it's like, okay, it's an easy on point. That's why I don't mind the soft reboots that companies do every couple of years, because it invites readers into having a taste of something new. And this was like, okay, well, it's Nightwing, it's not Batman, and it's issue 1, and it's it's something I can get from like Hitman, can start from the ground up, and I just thought it was brilliant. At the time, what did you say this was 96. So yeah, I was 14. So I was just like, this is really, really cool. He was Robin. He's Batman gives him a mission to go downriver to Bloodhaven because these bodies have washed up and investigate. And again, it's part of the Batman universe, but it's not part of the Batman universe because it's Dick on his own. Pardon the pun.
Yeah. No, I actually agree. I like this because it's sort of. It's him going at his own, and Bloodhaven is, is now synonymous with sort of Nightwing. One of the things that made me laugh about this, it's something they do. Gotham is supposed to be the cesspit. You have Metropolis, which is the light, and Gotham, which is the dark sort of thing. And so Gotham's always supposed to be, as you sort of said with Hitman, he lives in the Cauldron, which is sort of like, a crappy area of Gotham and all this other stuff. And in the introduction to this, they're like, oh, then you've got Bloodhaven, which is all the things where they're too sleazy for Gotham, they go here. And you're like, so there's an even worse place.
I know. But it's just like, so Scott McDaniel's art, I think it's on page 5 or 6, he does this like aerial shot of just like a seascape.
Yeah.
And it's like it's done from a drone, like a photo from a drone. And it's amazing. And just, his art is just absolutely fantastic. In this book, and he just keeps getting better and better and better. And he introduced me to Nightwing. It was a character that I know it had a history, but it wasn't 40 years of character that I had to learn. It's like, do you know what, I can get in on the ground level, and this it's starting his investigation, and it just it leads on to other stuff, and you get introduced to like people like Dudley Soames, who has a bigger part on later on in the series, and Blockbuster and stuff like that. It's just a really good series, and I'd recommend at least the first 20-30 issues of that to anyone that wants action and good story and detective work and stuff like that. It's good. Yeah,
no, it was. It's an interesting story because again, it's sort of it's not quite a one a one and done. But it's definitely an introductory issue. Like, it leads to other things, but like you say, you can read this issue and go, yeah, that was good or bad. Like, it gives you a really good taste of what's going to happen. I like the fact that the structure of the book as well. It's sort of like you say, I love the art. That top down view of the city is incredible. Like, I did enjoy. I was reading it on my tablet, and just seeing that, it's just a beautiful page.
Even the first page. You mean like the first when you open up the first page of Hitman, you've got Tommy Monaghan shooting someone in the face.
Yeah.
That's whoa, okay. You know what you're going to get straight away. And this one in Nightwing, you've got him changed to a fridge underwater.
I was going to say it's a hell of a start. Like you say, it's one of those things of told
his backstory and stuff like that. But it's even just have a look at the first page, and if you look at it and go, do you know what, I don't really want to know what happens here, then you don't like comics. It's like, I have to, how he got there. I have to know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's so well. It's really well done. I mean, Chuck Dixon. So the guy knows what he's doing. He's a really good, solid writer.
He's all right, isn't he? Yeah, he's all right.
Yeah.
He's a good writer.
But again, like I say, it's it's well paced. It's got some nice little nods as well, sort of like to update him. He at one point he loses his early 90s ponytail by having it chopped off, and he's just like, well, I was going to get rid of that anyway. But it's there's little things like that I thought were quite good, and
it's not like Superman, waking up with with long hair. It's like, well, that just happened. Like, there's a reason why he's got short hair rather than just him having a haircut.
Yeah,
and that's his hairstyle now, kind of like for the next 10 years it was.
Yeah, that's it, and it's sort of it seems to fit. It's all part of a fight. I mean, the one thing I will say is this book's got pace. It's really well paced. It just goes. You've got a little bit of you've got that introduction at the start, like you say, with him attached to a fridge underwater. And then you get a page or two of backstory of Batman setting his mission, and then it's like, go. It's sort of off, and then it's got like a car chase, it's got a fight, and the art is so frenetic and so sort of energetic. It's perfect for the character.
Well, if you like the art in this, say I don't know if you remember, but when Marvel and DC did a crossover, when they did their amalgam universe, they did one called Assassins, which is basically like Daredevil and Catwoman combined, and Scott McDaniel does the art in it, and it's just brilliant. He's got like a mixture of Kingpin and the Riddler, called like the Big Question and stuff like that. The art's just I love Scott McDaniel's art. I think it's just, you can tell he's come from Daredevil, and you can tell he knows how to do a fight scene. Even when you watch Nightwing jump from a building, you follow him, because he'll draw him like 10 times in a couple of on the page, just so you can watch him bounce from lamppost to car to building and stuff like that. The pacing and the energy is just amazing. It
really is. I was so impressed with that sort of setup, and giving Dick Nightwing a distinct voice. I mean, like you say, he'd been Batman, he'd been Robin, he'd become Nightwing, and he'd been in the Titans and all this other stuff, and this feels like a more distinctive 90s voice. Not say grown up, but it definitely
becoming a man.
Yeah,
He's gone from kid to teenager in the Titans, and now he's he's on his own. He's got his own mission. Batman said to him, "Look, I need you to solve this case. I don't have time." And it's like, well, there you go. It's that evolution. It was an evolution of a character you rarely get in comics, because comics are they don't grow usually as people. You can't have people get old, because
they all die.
Yeah, it's still stuck in like meant to be a 3-act structure, but you get to the end of the second act, and then it kind of reverts back to Act 1 again. So it's nice to see. You can see the kid as Robin, and then you can see him as a teenager in the Teen Titans, and then you can see him as a young man in his 20s.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, really. That of all the characters in DC, I think you've been able to see the growth of Dick Grayson. Like you say, Batman has never really aged. He sort of fluctuates between sort of 28 and 35. But weirdly, yeah, you've seen the growth of Dick Grayson from, say the boy wonder through to, a young man. And he seems to have maintained that early 20s, status quo, really. But you could easily follow sort of from, I don't know, the sort of 70s, I don't know when he sort of first became Nightwing, but you could easily do like a trail straight through from the 70s through to the late 90s of the growth of Dick Grayson from boy wonder to not grown Nightwing. That'd be really interesting, actually.
Will you stop saying the growth of Dick?
Yeah. I'm probably going to have to, just for that, I'm going to have to put the explicit mark on this podcast.
Ah, sorry. Apologies. I haven't sworn though.
No. Yeah, can we'll go mad. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. It's a really good starting point. And it definitely sets a tone. And an interesting story as well. Like, you know, it's a mystery to solve. So it's something to interest. How long did this series go for? I mean, was this another one that you sort of kept on with, or was it something that you were?
Do you know what? I kind of not. I trailed off after a few years after Scott McDaniel left, because at that time I was kind of following the art.
Mm.
So I read it for a good 30, 40 issues, I believe. So yeah, I'm just trying to remember where I started. But I am rereading. I'm kind of on a bit of a 90s throwback at the moment, and I'm kind of rereading stuff that I haven't followed in years. So I am. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Ooh.
I mean, the 90s gets a bit of a bad rap, doesn't it? I mean, everyone remembers, you know, the extreme stuff, and there's some, you know, there are some terrible 90s comics. But
there are some. But then you could say that. But that's the thing, is you could say that these days as well. There's some great comics, and there's some bad ones. You know, I mean, so I'm just looking at. I probably stopped around issue 46-ish. So I'm just like, but again, you know, yeah, the 90s weren't that bad. The 2000s weren't that bad. The 2020s ain't that bad. You know, you're going to get what people don't understand is, you know, comics is comics. You know, there's only certain things you can do with certain characters. So you're going to go through cycles, and you're going to get bored. And you know, companies are going to put out. Obviously, no one goes to make a comic that's bad, or no one goes to make a comic that's you know, cookie cutter and is very generic. But unfortunately, this is what annoys me when people say that, you know, they have to work for Marvel and they have to work for DC. It's like, do you know what? That's lovely. We'd all love to do that. You know, that's the dream, and that's not the goal. The goal is just to make good comics. But because the reason is, I don't think people realise that if you work for Marvel and DC, you're not working for Marvel and DC. You're actually working for Disney and Warner Brothers. Yeah. So there's certain things you can't do with those characters, because those characters are not worth millions. They're worth billions. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, it limits what you can do, and unfortunately, you know, sometimes you can push the boundaries a bit, but yeah, there's just certain things you cannot do with a character that you'd like to, because, you know, you give, you know, someone like, you know, like Grant Morrison, you know, carte blanche to do whatever they want with a character, and, you know, it would blow your mind. I mean, if you look at it now, I mean, DC do that, but they do it through their Black Label comics. You know, that they'll give characters to, you know, the best talent in the industry. You know, Scott Snyder again, and Greg Capullo, and, you know, and Jeff Lemire and people like that. And they've gone, like, it's not, you know, in canon, but you can go crazy. You can, like, it's almost like an Elseworld story. And that's the only way you can really get away with doing something crazy and extreme with a much loved character.
Yeah. No, I agree. I love the fact that I have to admit, I love the fact that they've done that, and some of the stuff that they've done in that Black Label has been really cool. You know, I need to get the rest of it, but they did one on The Question.
Yeah, I've got that. I haven't read it yet.
I'm the same. I've got the issues. I just haven't read them yet. But I read the first one, and it's really good. Like, you know, it's got Bill Sienkiewicz art. It's got, you know, it really just throws some stuff at the character, and you're like, yeah, you couldn't do this in canon. This is definitely a right, you can do what you want, but here's the character, do what you want, sort of thing. See what you can push it to.
But I'm reluctant to read it, only because I've never read The Question ever. I've never read any Question in comics. And when people come up to me at Comic Cons and they look at the ether, like they always draw similarities to Rorschach, and they always draw similarities to The Question. And they go, "Oh, did you? Oh, you read The Question?" I'm like, never read it. So it's one of the comics I kind of think, don't really want to read it. Because I don't want to read it. I can always say that no, this is, you know, something that I came up. The thing is, I knew that people were going to draw comparisons between Rorschach just because, like, the way the mask looks, yeah. And that's why I kind of sat on the idea for 3 years until I come up with the unique twist on it. So people go, "Oh, it's just like Rorschach, is it?" And then they read and they go, "It's not, is it? Yeah." Without spoiling, it's like, no, it's nothing like it. So yeah, The Question is, you know, the same kind of thing. It's just like, I really want to read it. It's like I like writing crime comics, and I'm doing one called White Noir, which I like. You know, I'm waiting for issue 2 to be finished drawing. And one of my mates said, "Oh, you need to read Criminal by Ed Brubaker and Phillips." and I've got the deluxe hardcover on my shelf.
Yeah.
And I can't, and I don't want to read it just because of what my friend says. Oh, it's like Criminal. And I'm like, I've never read it. I don't want to read it because I don't want it to. Because if you don't read it, you can't say you was influenced by it.
Yeah.
So I kind of have to wait till I've finished it before I can read comics. So same with like Invincible. I've got the first 3 Ultimate collections of Invincible on there on my shelf, and I really want to read that. And but I'm writing a superhero comic at the moment, and all my friends are like, "Oh, you've got to read Invincible." I'm like, I can't until I've done that.
Yeah. Oh, I will at some point, but not right now. Yeah, I know what you mean, and I can appreciate that. I do recommend it when you get around to reading it, you'll love it. It's really good. I mean, another Bill Sienkiewicz, another fantastic artist.
I will get to it.
But yeah, again, so we're saying 90s. There is some really good stuff that comes out of the 90s. I think this sort of gets tarred with some of the daft stuff. But yeah, this was a good example of that. I mean, it's got the fact the art's good, the pace is good. Chuck Dixon's always solid. This may be one I'll go back and dabble in a little bit and at least do, like you said, maybe do the first arc, the first trade or something just to see where it goes.
Well, I'm doing a reread of this as well, and I think I'm up to, where am I now? I'm up to about issue 29 of my reread of it. So, and it's still good. It still holds up. It's still a good comic.
Good. So that's obviously I got all of these. I should say I got all of these from Comixology. Really reasonable. And obviously you can pick up trades relatively reasonable on there as well at the moment. So definitely check them out. Okay, so we're doing a real jump now. We sort of jumped 3 years before. We're now going to jump like almost 20 years to 2015, and we're going to talk about Hawkeye. It's Matt Fraction's Hawkeye. Now, obviously, I read number 1 for this, but you say it's number 7. But I have read.
Sorry, number 11. Sorry, number 11. Apologies.
But I read this whole sort of run. I remember reading when it came out. This I'll let you do the recap of the episode of the issue, but this was a really good series. I remember this making waves just because it was so different to a lot of the stuff that was being done with the superheroes at the time.
Well, that's the reason why I wanted to pick this issue specifically is because I wanted to pick something that maybe not everyone would pick, because people are going to pick key issues of comics that they like. So I've picked a couple of issue ones, and I just wanted to pick a random one because this is obviously Matt Fraction, David Ayer with Matt Hollingsworth on the colours, and it's written differently from a lot of other comics. It's written in Marvel method, and for those of you who don't know what that is, basically certain writers write full scripts, so they'll do like page 1, panel 1, and they'll describe what's happening on the page and they'll write dialogue and stuff like that. But in the early days of Marvel, Stan Lee was writing so many comics, he created the Marvel method. So basically what he would do is he'd go to an artist and go, here's a couple of paragraphs, this is what's going to happen in the issue. The artist would go away and draw it, and then after it's all done, then Stan would come back in and put the word balloons in based on what the artist had done. So it's very loose, loose. But the reason why I like this issue so much is because it's told from Hawkeye's dog, Lucky, the Pete's dog's point of view.
Dog, yeah.
Pete's dog, and there's no words in it. Well, there are words in it, but like you're hearing the words as if the dog would hear. So there's a couple of speech balloons, and the dog only picks up every other word. Dogs can only learn like 200 words or whatever it is, and it's like pretty much like a silent comic, and you're just following this little dog on his own investigation. And I just think it's brilliant. It's great storytelling, and it doesn't matter how many times I read it, look at it, I always notice something new. Because there's just so much going on, and it's very, Matt Hollingsworth has done a very flat colour over Ayer's art, and it just fascinates me. It's storytelling, and it just shows you can write a comic, make a comic, and you should be able to take the words away from the comic, and I really should still be able to read what's going on the page.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of writers don't, like, especially new writers in the small press, that they overwrite. I mean, I was probably guilty of it as well. There's that thing, show but don't say. You don't have to go into every minute detail. Let the art do the talking. A great example of this would be like Kevin Smith's Guardian Devil run. You can tell Kevin's come from a screenplay writing aspect, because the pages are just so heavy with dialogue, which is great. It's beautiful, you know. And I remember seeing an interview with him when he was saying, he said like Joe Quesada turned around to him and just said, "Dude, I do need to have some room for the art." Do you know what I mean? And this is the complete opposite. You know, it's minimalistic, and this is what I try and do now in a lot of my writing. Is, you know, I when I'm writing dialogue, especially, I work to like old school Twitter rule. My old school Twitter rule is like, if I can't get what I want a character to say in 140 characters or less, I rewrite it because I don't want to take up too much space on the page. And when I get the art back, sometimes I'll remove dialogue completely because I want the art to speak for itself. I mean, currently, me and my Totty, J. Francis Totty, are doing it's trying to be a daily comic during the lockdown, and a lot of the time I'm just taking the dialogue out, just letting the action speak for it, because it's a very heavy action comic called Big F off words, which I'm not going to say the bad word for you, and it's just like I don't need to write a silly comment there or explain that because it's all there on the page. And this, Hawkeye is a great example of that. Not only is he written in a Marvel method, so there's already only a loose structure for the artist to go away and do his thing, and once the art's come back, it's like the writer doesn't really have to do much.
No,
it's brilliant, and it's just so clever. It's just a clever comic, and it's a great series, and it's pretty much Hawkeye. That if you grew up reading comics in the 80s and 90s like I did, it's a completely different Hawkeye than we knew. Do you know what I mean? It was like I grew up with the Hawkeye from the Avengers West Coast, with a big purple mask and stuff like, which I still love. I think they need to bring that costume back because I love it. But this isn't like the Marvel Cinematic Universe Hawkeye either, because he's not married, he's not got kids and stuff like. This is just like Hawkeye, what he does as an Avenger when he's not being an Avenger, and he's defending his neighborhood. And his building that he lives in, and it's just a great series. And there's not one aspect of it I don't like. The writing is great, the art is just superb, and the colours are just astronomically amazing. So yeah, I do.
It's not often we talk about colourists, but Matt Hollingsworth is one of those guys that he's done a couple of books where it's like I've what I'm reading, and I might know the artist, and then I'll go back and go, who's done the colours on this? Like, he does some really good work. I think the first time I actually checked out his colours, he did a Punisher. He did the colours on a Punisher run, not long ago. I can't tell you who wrote it, or
but you remember the colours.
Well, I remember the colours because when the art was great, and it had slightly different artists, but it was always like his colours were fantastic.
He's been around for years though. He was like colouring stuff like the Preacher and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like the good thing about Hawkeye is it's flat colours. There's no shading or very little of it or colour holds and stuff like that. It's literally just blocks of colour, and the colour choices that he uses are just that's just superb.
Yeah.
Especially in this issue as well, because on some of the pages, like he's just put yellow in where there's signs. That's it. The rest is just the dog running down white stairs. It's just it's very designed. This book, this is like art and colours working magically together. Because I don't think colourists get enough credit for what they do. Because if you look at a piece of, to be fair, ink, all aspects of the art. If you look at a penciled page, then you look at the inked page, it elevates it to a certain level, and you think, that's printable, now it's inked and stuff like that and shaded. But then once you give it to a colorist, that's where it truly comes alive, I believe, because the colorist's job is to lead the reader's eye around the page, just as like a cinematographer would do on a film. You're seeing certain things on the screen because the cinematographer's focused on that, and that's what a colorist is meant to do. He's meant to lead you around the page.
Yeah, and I also think that a colourist can set the tone, can't they? Really, incredibly sort of. I always think of the Killing Joke. The redone colours versus the original. I mean, nothing to disparage from the original colours. They were what they were for the book it was. But when they redid the colours, like there are certain sections where the tone has completely changed, and it's interesting to see how that can be.
But that's why when I write a script now, I would kind of give a little bit of colour direction as well. And I don't mean like this needs to be red, this needs to be. It's like I'll set what time of the day it is or what season it is, just so when a colorist sees the art and reads the script and go, all right, so this is meant to be set, in autumn, so that those trees, need to be, orangey red. The sky, it's dusk, so the sun's not going to be as high, so that's why the shadow. Just trying to give as much information to the art team as possible, just so we can create a comic that works. Because it's one of the reasons why I never put myself down as the creator of any of my comics, because it is a collaboration. Without the artist, all I would have to be, words on a page, and without colorists, all I would have is, a black and white book. It's a synergy of a team working together to create something that hopefully tells a story, coherently and enjoyably. That's the goal.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think it's been recognised, I think, more and more that collaboration. Sort of this. So it's, the 90s became, let's say, that the artists were the rock stars, and then sort of. Relatively recently, I suppose, sort of the 20 teens and stuff. I think writers became a bit of the rock star in the comic industry, but really, it's a collaborative medium, isn't it? I think. Yeah. You mentioned about Scott Snyder before, and I remember that there's been interviews, a similar situation between Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, where they almost came to sort of loggerheads over wordage versus art, and they ironed it out, and working with obviously Danny Mickey and FCO,
yeah, FCO and the colours, yeah.
That team.
Oh, do you know what? I absolutely love that run of Batman, and I don't care what anyone says. I'll fight them to the death. Starting from the Court of Owls. Was it Zero? Yeah, don't get me wrong. The story's, in my opinion, it's not as good as some of the. It's good, but it's not as good as some of the other aspects of it. But you look at the art and the story and those colours on it. Oh. Yeah, like the pinks and the purples and the neons. It's just it's visually stunning. But to say that the story is really good, but I kind of preferred some of the earlier stuff. Like the Court of Owls and stuff like that. It's genius. Court of Owls is genius. It's Batman's had a villain all this time that he never knew about.
Yeah,
it's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. I could talk comics all day. Sorry.
No, that's what it's about. That's why I love it. Yeah, but no, you're right. I mean, because I love those teams. When you do see those teams, and there are certain sort of like art teams that when I see together, I'm like, oh, goody. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
And because there's others when I think one of the ones is sort of like talk about Greg Capullo. He's obviously had Danny Mickey do his art, his inking for quite
20, 30 years now.
Yeah, a long time. And because you go back, I'm a big fan of I'm a big fan of Spawn. It's one of my guilty pleasures. I'll admit it. I love the Spawn series.
Do you know what? Never read it. I read the odd issue, like when the film came out, back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And literally, I bought over a couple of sales in Comixology. I bought every issue, and I'm slowly working my way through them. And I think I'm up to, where am I up to now on it? Ooh, it's weird because I'll go for a chunk where I'll read like 12, 13 issues, and then I'll leave for a couple of months, because when you're like, I've had a bit of enough of it. I need a break from a book, just for a couple of weeks, just to mix it up. I've bought up to 300, and where am I? Oh dear, I'm well in triple digits now. I'm well over the 100 mark and stuff. So I'm slowly getting there.
It's had its sort of ups and downs, as it does, and Todd McFarlane has learned to become a better writer over time. But there's still stuff in there. But there's times when Greg Capullo first came on, he was being inked by Todd McFarlane, and his heavy, it was heavily Todd McFarlane inked. It's. And so looking back, there's even issues I'm like, I'm not sure who. I have to check. Even now, I'm not sure who's drawing this. Is this Todd McFarlane or is this Greg Capullo? And then all of a sudden, like, the inking changes and the art changes, and then the colorist changes, and FCO comes on and does the colors for sort of like that. There's a block from about 80 to 100, just over 100, and it's just fabulous. It is.
I'm on 117. That's what I'm on now.
Yeah.
I'm on 116.
So you've just done that sort of like that thing. There's a block, as I say, from 80 to just over 100, about 100, 101, where when Greg Capullo leaves and Angel, comes on. It's just wonderful. But that art team is just cracking. And I could praise Greg Capullo's art all day, every day. I mean, I think.
God, yeah.
The guy knows what he's doing. But yeah, so like I say, that's the thing with going back to Hawkeye with David Ayer. His art, when he sort of turns up on things, I'll always check it out, because I think he's one of those artists that I just think, his style can be quite adaptable.
I love it. It's very. I don't know much about him, but I'm assuming he comes from a graphic design background, because if not, he needs to be, because just the way the design of the pages, it's art. It's beautiful. I mean, I'm looking at, as we're talking, I'm going through it. On one page, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 panels on a page, plus a third of the page is taken up by these little other circles. It's like, that's a lot of panels on a page.
Yeah.
And if you used to write that in a script and give that to an artist, it'd be like, oh my god, it's like 9 panels on a page. That's a lot of work. But it's obviously, again, because it's Marvel method, but he's designing it in his own head. He's not following, it has to be this way. He's just creating it as he sees fit. It's brilliant. The backgrounds are minimal, and it's just, it's superb. It's just so well done together, and the writing is fantastic. From the start of the collection to the end. When it moves into like the Kate Bishop era and stuff like that, it's just a good book. The whole series is just fantastic.
Well, one of the things I'd say about this series, especially the first bit of the run, like you say, it's Hawkeye on his days off, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, pretty much.
And he ends up getting involved in other things, but you could easily take that out. And you could make this sort of like, you could make this an image book. He doesn't have to be Hawkeye. You could just make him any other sort of. You could introduce him into any other superhero universe or not, and it still works. And it's just such a relatable book in that way.
Could just be random Archer goes home for a weekend and this is what happens to him. Do you know what I mean? It's just a fantastic book. Again, I've got the trade, the floppies, and digitally and stuff like that, and it's just. Yeah, from start to finish, it's just a fantastic book. And even David Ayer does the majority of the art, but you got Francesco Francavalli, coming on board as well, and kicks ass. And it's that perfect storm of like perfect writing, perfect art, perfect colours. And I think was it Javier Pulido? I think does a couple of issues as well, and he's got a very different art style. But again, it just. Hollingsworth's colours on it. Even though it's a different artist, it still looks like the Hawkeye. Rather than bringing a different an artist team, and it kind of looks out of sequence. Yeah, it still looks the same.
Maintaining that tone and stuff.
Yeah.
When this came out in 2015, that's around the Marvel Now period. And I think this is when Marvel were sort of being a bit more experimental. Yeah, a bit more willing to do things. I mean, this is also when sort of Warren Ellis and Declan Shelvey and Moon Knight, their Moon Knight run. I mean, again, talk about colorists. I'm going to have to bloody check now.
Is it Jordi Belair?
Jordi Belair. There you go. Yeah, bloody hell. Like, there's another colorist that I've loved for a long time, from when Jordi Belair on some of the early Captain America books and some other bits, and working with some others on some image books. Like, it's just fantastic. But that's another one where they were just letting artists and teams do what they wanted to do, and it really seemed to pay off. And I think this will go. I think I'd say Hawkeye will go down, and people will revisit it 20, 30 years from now in that classic status of, oh yeah, this was that early 2000s or the early 2010s. This is one of the classic books from that era.
It's like we were saying earlier. You could pick any decade of a comic industry, and people go, "Oh, that industry sucked." It's like music. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're like, "Oh, the '80s sucked," and then you kind of, no, actually, there was some really good music. Don't get me wrong, the majority of it was shit. Yeah. Because you had like this people, that artist, that song that was number one for the entire summer. But comics are the same. Like, you'll get peaks and troughs of like, do you know what? That wasn't good. There was a bit of a lapse in the character in that industry. But then you'll find just like nuggets of pure gold, of pure perfect storytelling. My favourite character. I mean, ironically, my favourite character is Daredevil, and I haven't put the Daredevil book to talk about, because I thought that'd be a bit too obvious. I wanted to try and push myself outside my comfort zone to pick books that are outside that. And over the years, Daredevil's up and down, up and down, up and down. But then you get like Mark Waid and Chris Somney on it, and it just kills. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then you'll get I've only read a few issues of like Chip Zdarsky's run, and it's brilliant. Do you know what I mean? It just the character just gets elevated. But then you'll get another team on there, and it's not their fault that the book's not as good, but they've got a lot to live up to with the creators that kind of went before, and they might be stuck under for less of a better term, under the thumb of the corporation to do something different with a character, because there's a franchise coming out, so they kind of want to tie it in, and so that their run's not as impactful. But again, you can find great comics in any decade, in any year. I mean, obviously, I know at the moment with the lockdown, it's hard to see comics coming out regularly, but you pick any year, and I guarantee I can find you a half dozen great books or great issues.
Oh yeah, I agree.
It's not hard. Do you know what I mean?
No, and I think one of the things, especially thinking Marvel and DC, really. I mean, like you say about being under the working, especially under the Disney banner or the Warner Brothers banner. If I was to be a writer or an artist, I think everyone sort of says, "Oh yeah, I want to do a Batman book," or "I want to do." I'll do the next Iron Man book or whatever. I mean, you get people that have done that's done like an incredible run on Thor. Is that Matt Fraction actually?
Was it Jason Aaron?
Jason Aaron. So Jason Aaron's run on with God Bomb, and that was incredible. And you think, okay, you're going to do one of those big characters that's sort of, in the A list, and it's going to be you got people are going to look at it because they've got the films coming out. But then you get other people, they for some reason go, in the meantime, we're also going to do Squirrel Girl. We're going to redo Howard the Duck. We're going to introduce sort of Gwenpool. All these other weird characters. And I'd be thinking, can I do one of them? Because you just get to just do what I want, and no one's going to really care.
The weird thing was, because I go to MCM Comic Con, that's my main Comic Con that I do because it's local to me, and every October they have what's called a summit. Basically, they get people over from Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, and stuff like that, and they have them upstairs in the banquet suites, and they will speak to the comic shops that come over to the UK, and basically, like, the shops will say that this is what we think you're doing wrong, and the comic companies will, they'll talk about what's coming out in the next 6 to 12 months, so you can get people excited and stuff like that. And I was fortunate to be invited to one of them, and I got to sit into a presentation by Dan DiDio, who's obviously now not with DC, but he was so passionate about the way he spoke about comics, and it was very inspirational, because he was saying, like, do you know what? As long as we get comics like Batman and Superman right, because they're our biggest sellers, they're always going to be the biggest sellers because they're staples. He goes, but as long as we get those right, it means we get to take risks on stuff like a Snagglepuss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, there's a Snagglepuss comic. Who's a gay playwright in the South. Do you know what I mean? And so you sound like risks like Squirrel Girl and stuff like that, because someone's gonna want to read that, and like we get to do like the Flintstones, and it's just like, yeah, it's like we just want to make comics. Comics are fun. Comics are for everyone. So let's just make comics. And it's like you say, like, it's good to have comics that just talk to everyone. That's, comics are meant to be fun. You get people going, oh, that's not the character that I like. It's like, dude, if you don't like it, there's another comic coming out any minute that you might like. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So that's what annoys me on Twitter. Like, you get certain, like, especially in like the small press stuff, like you get a lot of creators that will slag off the books of like the big two and stuff like. You're like, dude, you know how much effort it takes to put into to make a comic. And if someone said that about your books, you would be crushed. So what would you say about other people's books? It's like, do you know what? It might not be what you would have done with a character, but they're doing what they do. They're doing what they love. They're telling their story. So let them have their moment. And if you don't like it, don't buy it. Vote with your vote with your wallet.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I mean, there are certain characters that I will buy pretty much. Well, I will buy everything. So I'll say Moon Knight. And everyone talks about the Bendis Alex Maleev run, and it's sort of like, it isn't great. I'm not a huge Bendis fan, but you know what? There is some really good stuff in that series, and Alex Maleev's art is incredible. So, well, you should read their Daredevil stuff if you've not read that, because that's fantastic. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I think I've read the first volume of that when it was. Well, do you know what they do a book together? It's a Daredevil one. Basically, it's End of Days. It's basically like the death of Daredevil. Yeah. It's like the final Daredevil story. It's just breathtaking. Like, it's art and story. You can tell that it's a character they love. How they've not taken it lightly that they're killing a character they like. Because that's the thing, is like, I could write a Batman story. I could kill Batman.
you know, and not having it like I've not been writing it for like 6-7 years, so I'm not emotionally attached to it. But you can tell they've been writing Daredevil for such a long time. Like, do you know what would be like the end of our run? Let's just do the last Daredevil story, and it's like a love letter. It's just amazing. I like Bendis. Do you know what I mean? I think he's a good writer. You know, his new Avengers stuff's brilliant.
Yeah.
Got me reading the Avengers. Never read the Avengers before.
That's it. Like I say, I mean, I'm not his biggest fan across all the things, but I will never deny that his Ultimate Spider-Man run is phenomenal. You know, that sort of I've read the first sort of probably 8 to 10 volumes of that, and it's really, really good. And so, you know,
comics are good comics.
Exactly.
You know, regardless of who writes it, who draws it. It's like you said, like if you've got a writer that's on his A game, that knows what he's doing, and if he's working with a collaborator and an artist that, you know, that they gel and they can put something special together, you're going to make a good comic. It's hard not to. No,
I agree. Well, on that note, we shall look to wrap up. So, Matt, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
It's been a joy. And just before we leave, then, just one more go. Where can people find your stuff? And you know, give yourself a little pop.
You can find me on Twitter at Matt Garvey 1981. My website is mattgarvey.co.uk. It's got a link to my shop there, where you can, you know, buy all my comics. My comics are also on Comixology as well. Just search for me. Yeah, just come check me out. You know, if you see me at Comic-Con and you want to have a chat about how to make comics, how I got my start and stuff like that, I'm always happy to help people, you know, get on the run and start their journey, because we've all got to start somewhere. So I'm always happy to give advice and have a chat and, you know, give feedback and help in any way I can.
Excellent. Yes, and that's where I met you. Was at a con, so I can attest to the fact that you are incredibly friendly and happy to chat. So, you know, please do, if you see him, you know, grab Matt for a chat. It was really good fun.
Cool.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt.
You're more than welcome, buddy. Thank you for having me again.
No, it's great, and we'll try and do this again some other time.
Anytime. You just let me know when.
Will do. All right, and cheers, Matt.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Another great 20th Century Geek episode. Thank you for listening. If you would like to get in contact to suggest topics for future shows, or just chat about everything nerdy, you can email me at 20thcenturygeek@gmail.com. That's 20thcenturygeek@gmail.com. Or find me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Just search for 20th Century Geek. If you would like to support the show, please go on your podcast catcher and leave a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate it. It raises the show in the ranks and lets more people know about the podcast. If you want to show more support for the podcast, we do have an Amazon wish list. Just go on Amazon and search for 20th Century Geek, and you will find a list of books that will help with research for future podcasts. And don't forget, we love second-hand books in 20th Century Towers. Once again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.